Let's rank the 8 ways you have to achieve immortality in the Naruto universe. Bear in mind that there is no true immortality in Naruto, it's impossible for one to live forever. However, there are 8 ways where one could extend his life indefinitely by some jutsu or other means. And I'm gonna be ranking these 8 methods from worst to best, computing how easy it is to achieve the method and also how effective it is on making you immortal. Starting off with method number 8, to turn yourself into a puppet. Only one Naruto character has ever done this, Sasori of the Red Sand, the most powerful puppet user of the verse. Sure, Chio turned her arm into a puppet arm, but it wasn't her entire body, and it certainly didn't grant her immortality. What Sasori did was far more extreme. He essentially discarded his original body and turned himself into a complete puppet. After he did so, Sasori no longer aged. As Chio remarked, he looked exactly the same as he used to be when he was in the village, which was 20 years before. Sasori turning himself into a puppet and acquiring this type of immortality, never aging, resonates a lot with the theme of the character, an artist that believed that true art was eternal, that real beauty never wavered. Unfortunately for him, this was not the case, as he died in the fight against Chio and Sakura, and because he actually wanted to die in the arms of his parents. It was a pretty tragic death. And I'm ranking Sasori's method as the worst on the list because it has a lot of drawbacks for him. Sure, we don't know how exactly he turned himself into a puppet, but I have to imagine it's pretty difficult seeing that he is the only one to ever achieve that, and he needs to preserve his living core, which he uses to keep himself alive forever. He can swap the core from puppet to puppet, which he actually does in the fight against Chio and Sakura, but if the core is destroyed, Sasori dies, which is a big problem. Sure, Chio and Sakura took a while to figure that out because you couldn't really see the core for most of the fight, and even when you see it, you don't really acknowledge the fact that, okay, I have to destroy that thing immediately in order to kill him, because it's pretty counterintuitive. However, once Chio and Sakura understood that, they knew what to do. And if Sasori is fighting against somebody way more powerful than them, or at least that has access to more powerful ninjutsu in a larger scale, then they can even destroy Sasori's puppet body with the core at once. So it's definitely the worst method of them, and there's no real way to get around it, except when Sasori launches the living core to another puppet to try and escape from attacks, which is certainly doable, but the living core is just a great vulnerability for Sasori, which the other entries on this list don't really have. Number 7, becoming the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. Now yes, this is certainly the most difficult method to achieve by far on the list, because in order for you to become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, you first have to collect all 9 tail beasts, the mission that the Akatsuki was trying to do the entire series, which took them years upon years to accomplish, and they didn't even do that up until Madara arrived in the war. And you also need access to a Rinnegan, either awakening it or stealing from somebody else so that you can summon the Geromazo and seal the tail beasts inside of it so that they can coalesce into the Ten Tails. But yeah, once you become the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails, you are the strongest being in the verse, and you are also immortal, if nobody kills you, obviously, and it's very difficult to kill a Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. But if no one kills you, you're just gonna live forever because the power of the Ten Tails sustains your life indefinitely. I'm ranking this method pretty low because first of all it's extremely difficult to accomplish, but also you need access to a Rinnegan in order to do that, and just having a Rinnegan is another entry in this list, so yeah, it's pretty redundant when we talk about immortality and being the Jinchuriki of the Ten Tails. Method number 6 is going to be to acquire a Rinnegan. Now, we don't know exactly what a Rinnegan user would do in order to become immortal, but Sasuke was pretty damn sure in his fight against Naruto in the Valley of the End that with his Rinnegan, he would not die and he could extend his life forever. And even though Sasuke does not share the method that he would use in order to become immortal there are 2 pretty good candidates. Number 1, using the Naraka path, summoning the King of Hell and essentially rebuilding yourself once you're pretty old or hurt, and then you just don't die. During the Pain arc, the Naraka path uses the King of Hell time and time again to essentially revive the paths of pain that were destroyed during the invasion. It was one of the most troublesome pains to deal with because you simply cannot destroy the pains without destroying him first, because he's just gonna bring them back. The only issue is that we only see the King of Hell being used on the pain bodies which are not alive, so we just don't know if this jutsu would work on a living being. Like if you lose an arm, for example, can you summon the King of Hell? The King of Hell will like chews on you and then you just get your arm back once you exit him. But the King of Hell is not very much explored in the series, and I don't think this is the most likely alternative for how one would become immortal using the Rinnegan, because there's another possibility which I think much more captivating, and we see a pretty good example of it on screen. It's just that the example is kind of weird, which is by using the Preta path. absorbing someone else's chakra and regaining your vitality. We see Nagato as an Edo Tensei when he fought against Bee and Naruto that Bee tried to lariat Nagato with his version 2 A-Tails cloak. Nagato tanked the lariat and used the Predator Path to absorb the version 2 cloak. And when he did so, he regained his jovial appearance because when he died, he used the Rinnegan Tensei, and because of the efforts and the inherent properties of the jutsu, his appearance became very old and his body got decrepit. So when Kabuto brought him back via Edo Tensei, he was like that. He couldn't even move by himself. Itachi had to drag him along and he had to use his summons in order to move in the battlefield. But once Nagato used the Predator Path to absorb Beast's chakra there, he regained his appearance from back in the day even. He was even better than he was when he was alive and all skinny because of the rods entering his body which were sending chakra to the paths of pain. Obviously when Nagato did that, he was not alive, he was an Edo Tensei, so one could say, well, it wouldn't work when you are alive because this was just a property of the Edo Tensei or something like that, but I just don't think that would be the case. If the jutsu managed to rejuvenate Nagato when he was in Edo, it should do the same thing when you were alive. It should work even better because you're actually alive and you're going to benefit much more from becoming younger, or at least feeling like you're younger. You don't actually become younger age-wise, but you understand. So a Rinnegan user, whenever you're getting old and decrepit, or, you know, reaching your 40s, whatever, you want to be 20 again, you can drain somebody's chakra, preferably somebody that has a lot of chakra, like a Jinchuriki of the A-Tails, and become young again, and you can repeat that process forever. Is it a bit unethical? Well, I guess, because you are draining somebody else's chakra, but you're not really killing anybody. Maybe you can ask a friend that has a lot of chakra, can you help me out, become young again and not die? That should work fine, and that can be done indefinitely. Also, if this is the case, you don't even have to awaken the Rinnegan in order to become immortal. You just have to get one, like Nagato, for example. He didn't awaken the Rinnegan, but he managed to become younger by using the Predator Path, a jutsu that you have access to even if you just steal a Rinnegan. You don't have to awaken the jutsu in order to possess the Predator Path. This method is pretty good in terms of how feasible it is once you have a Rinnegan. The problem is acquiring a Rinnegan is very difficult, either by stealing one or just awakening it. Number 5, we have Orochimaru's body transfer jutsu. This jutsu allows Orochimaru to transfer his life's essence into somebody else's body. He gains complete control over that person's body, and it just becomes Orochimaru's default new body. He does the body transfer jutsu whenever he feels his current body is getting deteriorated, which usually takes around 3 to 4 years. Now, Orochimaru's final goal was to find a perfect vessel for himself, which was supposed to be Kimimaro and then was supposed to be Sasuke, bodies that would not deteriorate, and Orochimaru will be able to inhabit them forever. Orochimaru also acquires the abilities of whoever's body he is possessing, and he can mix them with his own jutsu. That's one of the prime reasons why he was after Kimimaro first with his Bone Kekkei Genkai, and then Sasuke with his Sharingan Kekkei Genkai, and before those two even, he was after Itachi with, you know, the Uchiha Kekkei Genkai as well. That's the entire reason why Orochimaru accepted Sasuke into his hideout, so he could train him, so eventually Orochimaru would take over a much stronger body, and a body that would be ready to receive him. Orochimaru is the only known user of this jutsu, and it feels very Orochimaru-esque, and a terrifying jutsu. Whenever Orochimaru takes away his skin in the fight against Hiruzen, peeling back his face and shows his real female face to Hiruzen, that's absolutely terrifying. Now, this method has a lot of potential to make you very much immortal. However, Orochimaru never really fulfills the potential of the jutsu because he never gets a perfect vessel. Kimimaro dies of an unspecified disease before Orochimaru can get the transfer done, and he would have to swap bodies pretty quick because Kimimaro's body was deteriorating fast. And then when he tried to get Sasuke's perfect vessel body, that didn't work out so great for him. And that's another big drawback of this jutsu. You need to sacrifice a person which you're essentially going to kill in order to inhabit the body. The stronger the person is, the better it is for you once you inhabit the person's body, but this is also a double-edged sword because if the body you're trying to inhabit is of a very strong person, he can fight back, just like Sasuke did, and essentially pulled a massive Uno reverse card on Orochimaru when Sasuke absorbed Orochimaru instead of Orochimaru absorbing Sasuke in a very humiliating fight, where we actually see Orochimaru's true form in that white snake. Obviously, this method is extremely unethical because you're killing the person you're inhabiting, but Orochimaru doesn't care about that at all. It's also a pretty messy method. Orochimaru cannot really use his jutsus and his body properly after a while. And you know, you can still be killed. There's nothing stopping someone from from killing the body that Orochimaru is currently inhabiting. However, even if that happens, Orochimaru still has a failsafe, which is actually going to be method number 4. Orochimaru is the guy who's actually immortal throughout the series. He didn't die, even though a lot of people try to kill him. And that's probably because he has 2 pretty good methods to achieve immortality. Whenever Orochimaru is bestowed the curse mark upon one of his underlings, minions, whatever you want to call them, he also implants a part of himself on that person, a fraction of his soul and chakra which can be brought back to life if Orochimaru died, and this is exactly what Sasuke does in the War Arc. He pretty much pulls Orochimaru out of Anko's curse mark. And let me be honest here, this is my least favorite immortality method by a long shot on this list. It really comes out of freaking nowhere and was just an excuse to bring Orochimaru back in the War Arc because Kishimoto didn't have a better idea and he didn't build this up beforehand. It just came out of nowhere and Sasuke thought, yeah, if I weave the hand seals for the sealing jutsu Kakashi used on my curse mark in reverse, the jutsu will also work in reverse and release the curse mark from Anko, liberating Orochimaru out of her. Now that's a great leap in logic. It was never established once in the series that if you weave the hand signs of a particular jutsu in reverse, the jutsu is going to work in the opposite way. Like if you weave the hand signs for the fireball jutsu in reverse, or you're going to spit a water ball or something. That makes no sense whatsoever. That was like a massive leap in logic, or it's just a rule that Kishimoto never established and oh yeah, no, Sasuke just came up with it on the fly. Not a lot of people pay attention to this or even bother too much when Orochimaru is brought back, but this really annoys me in the War Arc. These things that appear out of nowhere in the most convenient way because the plot demands it to, with no build-up whatsoever, and I can give several examples here. Izanami, Orochimaru being revived, Kaguya and the entire Black Zetsu retcon, Obito using Ginkaku and Kinkaku to revive the Ten Tails, and yeah, Orochimaru being revived is just one of those bad points in the War Arc. But isn't just the mechanics of the jutsu Sasuke uses to bring Orochimaru back that makes no sense? The way Orochimaru returns also makes no sense because he returns with his regular body and he had no body at that point of the story. He should at least be in his snake form, but no, he is in his Orochimaru form, regular Orochimaru. And also, it definitely feels like he returns in full power and not a fraction of his power, which should be the case, right? If Sasuke is pulling him back from the curse mark, I would imagine that it wouldn't be a lot of his power that was imbued into Anko. Now, maybe he just gave more power to Anko when he bestowed her the curse mark because he was the first curse mark that Orochimaru ever bestowed, seeing that Anko was Orochimaru's first pupil. But it's so contrived. And then sure, Orochimaru absorbs his chakra from Kabuto, and Kabuto reverts back to his regular appearance, no longer scaled and snaky. But then when Kabuto appears again, he is snaky like Orochimaru, even though Orochimaru absorbed his chakra from Kabuto, taking it back. Like when Kabuto healed Sasuke's wounds, he was in Snake Sage mode. Now I guess you can argue he was with that appearance because he was using Snake Sage mode, which I thought he was only capable of because he had Orochimaru's cells/chakra, but sure, maybe Kabuto can just use by himself. So you could say, yeah, perhaps he was just looking like that because of his Sage mode, but then when he's taking care of the orphanage and stuff, he still looks like a white snake. So I guess Kishimoto just forgot that Orochimaru took his powers from Kabuto and Kabuto's appearance reverted back to his regular self. And then there's the entire thing that's very convenient. They find a mask which so happens to release the Reaper Death Seal so that they can bring back the 4 Hokage, which I really like what the 4 Hokage doing the work, but the way they were brought back was stupid. And it was only then that Orochimaru got a new body when he entered a White Zetsu body, which actually feels like it's a good body for Orochimaru to inhabit, seeing that they're pretty much Hashirama's clones. And this method kinda sucks. Like, are you really telling me that Orochimaru was bestowing himself into every single person that had the curse mark? Remember when Sasuke, Karin, and Suigetsu were going to get Jugo from his prison cell, and there was an army of people with curse marks that they had to fight against? So all of them had some of Orochimaru inside of them? It's so weird. I don't like the concept at all. I also don't really like the concept of Orochimaru's chakra taking over Kabuto's appearance, because this infectious nature of chakra should be reserved to much more powerful individuals like Hashirama and his Hashirama cells, for example, that just infect the body and bestow their properties upon it. But Orochimaru never even comes close to Hashirama in terms of raw strength, so his cells/chakra shouldn't do that to Kabuto. I don't like that very much. Well, let's move on to method number 3. Kakuzu's heart stealing. Now, this is a method that managed to extend Kakuzu's life for quite some time. He died in his mid-90s, and used this method all those decades in order to keep himself alive and also very jovial. This method simply consists of Kakuzu stealing the heart of a ninja he kills. He then imbues that heart with his own powers, creating that simulacrum almost that can move on its own accord, and that acquires the powers of the ninja Kakuzu killed, especially the nature transformation that ninja possessed. That's the reason why each heart that Kakuzu had a different chakra transformation release, and he had access to all 5 of them, and it's very rare for a ninja to have access to all of them, especially a ninja that doesn't have hacks, which, let's be real here, the heart stealing jutsu is a hack. Kakuzu can stow the hearts within himself, or the hearts can move freely and attack individually apart from Kakuzu's main body. Also, when Kakuzu's body is destroyed, then his heart is destroyed as well. And yeah, essentially Kakuzu has 5 lives, which is pretty good for him. Now, yes, we know that attacks can kill more than 1 heart at the same time. Naruto's Rasen Shuriken took care of 2 hearts at once, and there's nothing really stopping a much more powerful attack from like one-shotting all the hearts at the same time. It's just not something very likely to happen if Kakuzu doesn't encounter an extremely powerful foe. Meaning that even if Kakuzu loses hearts during the fight, he can actually recover those hearts from the ninjas he's dealing with at the moment. That was actually his initial plan in the fight against Kakashi, but then he changed his mind and was like, nah, I'm just gonna kill you, it's fine. And according to Naruto lore, Kakuzu acquired this jutsu by stealing from his village. It was a secret jutsu of the Waterfall village, which he stole and went rogue after the village reprimanded him from failing to kill Hashirama Senju, which is like, yeah man, I didn't know you guys were gonna punish him for not killing the god of shinobi, but that's fine. I guess it's a little bit harsh, but yeah, you should have done better, Kakuzu. Regardless, it's a pretty good way to keep yourself alive indefinitely. Sure, it's pretty unethical. I would say it's not as unethical as Orochimaru's method, which you have to essentially inhabit somebody else's body. It's much more invasive, but you have to kill more people, I guess, if you burn through those hearts quickly, but there's really no shortage of hearts, and it's pretty easy once Kakuzu gets you, especially if you're not a very powerful ninja. Kakuzu can just yank your heart out and use to extend his life, just like he does in the work with those fodder ninjas. Now sure, technically he didn't need to do that in the work because he was Neto Tensei and immortal therefore, but the hearts also give Kakuzu extra powers as he acquires the abilities of the ninja he killed. So it's a pretty good method and relatively easy to accomplish. I mean, obviously you have to acquire / learn the jutsu first, but once you do, you just have to harvest the hearts, which is not terribly difficult if you're marginally powerful in the Narutoverse. Moving on to number 2, we have Hidan's immortality, which honestly is probably the most mysterious method on this list, which I like. It's good that Hidan's powers remain mysterious because the character was inherently mysterious, and that mysterious nature makes him more intriguing than if you explained detail by detail of how his immortality worked. But what we can surmise is that Hidan, by being a disciple of Jashin, a very faithful disciple at that, gained a pretty consistent and reliable form of immortality in exchange for the sacrifices he made using Jashin's ritual. It's a ritual where he has to hurt himself while hurting the opponent at the same time, and that seems to be the way Jashin demands. That's how Jashin is going to keep you immortal, because you are providing sacrifices to him. Other than that, we don't know much about the mechanics really. We just know that it's a very persistent form of immortality, because even though Asuma beheaded Hidan, he was still talking. He was quote-unquote fine, even though his head wasn't attached to his body. And even when Shikamaru literally explodes him into pieces, he is still alive and screaming. Now, I guess there are jutsus that could theoretically kill him for real, but these would be jutsus that essentially atomize you and don't allow any sort of rebuilding, like Kakuzu sewing Hidan's body parts back into him. Things like Particle Style or Amaterasu would probably kill Hidan for real. But anything less than a jutsu that is going to essentially scorch your body into atoms is not gonna kill the guy. Well, according to the data books, Hidan died of malnutrition in that pit that Shikamaru tossed him in, and I absolutely detest that, and I choose not to accept that as my canon. It's so much more interesting if Hidan is gonna be there forever alive and cursing at Shikamaru for what he did to him, and it's much more thematically aligned with the theme of if you curse someone, you're cursing yourself as well. So yeah, beheading the guy doesn't work, but apparently if you don't give him anything to eat, he dies. That seems a little counterintuitive, but whatever. I guess you could say that Hidan died there because he's no longer doing the sacrifices and therefore Jashin cut off ties with him, making him mortal again. But that's just not very interesting. Alright, moving on to number 1 and the best method to become immortal in Naruto. Now this is gonna be a bit of a weird method and maybe you're gonna be pissed at me for putting it in first place, but this method is going to be releasing your own Edo Tensei. This is what Madara did in the end of his fight against the 5 Kage, breaking the Edo Tensei contract and releasing Kabuto's connection to the Edo Tensei, essentially becoming an undead, immortal body that cannot be destroyed. It's just going to regenerate forever, and nobody really controls it. Well, Kabuto wouldn't be able to control Madara beforehand anyways, because if Madara wanted, he could have overpowered Kabuto's commands, just like Hashirama could overpower Orochimaru's commands. If Kabuto wanted to control Madara perfectly, he would have to use that tag to erase Madara's mind. The same thing Orochimaru did to Tobirama and Hashirama in his fight against Hiruzen back in Naruto Part 1, but that really nerfs the ability and the power of the Edo Tensei, so Kabuto didn't want to do that with Madara, and Madara, he was fighting for Kabuto's cause, or, well, at least Kabuto's indirect cause, because he didn't really want to do the Infinite Tsukiyomi, but Madara was furthering Kabuto's goals by fighting against the Alliance. So Kabuto just gave Madara free control, however, the Edo Tensei contract was still bound to Kabuto, and Kabuto could release the Edo Tensei should he choose, and Itachi forced him to do so after winning the fight, but Madara very cleverly released the Edo Tensei from himself, breaking the contract with Kabuto, and he became just an Edo Tensei body that obeyed no one. And yes, technically Madara is dead in this situation because he is an Edo Tensei, but you are conscious of your actions, you are quote-unquote living in this world, and you cannot die. That's the real deal here. If you get damaged, the Edo Tensei is just going to regenerate. And it's actually pretty easy to accomplish once you are an Edo Tensei. If you weave the Edo Tensei hand signs, you break the contract of the jutsu and release yourself from it, becoming this immortal body that's not controlled by anyone. And yeah, I don't really love the way Madara breaks the contract of the jutsu by just knowing the hand signs and weaving them. That's also a bit forced, and it was done to keep Madara in the story, because otherwise he would have disappeared with the other Edo Tensei. I understand why Kishimoto did it, and I think it was a good idea to keep Madara in the story longer, but it could have been done a little bit more elegantly than just having Madara know the Edo Tensei hand signs, which sure, I don't question the fact of Madara knowing the hand signs, but just weaving the hand signs, releasing the jutsu seems a little too easy for me. Regardless of that, this is the best method for being immortal in the series. Even though you're technically not alive, you do not die as an Edo Tensei. Unlike most of the other options here, you cannot be killed. The only way to deal with you is sealing you, which would work on any of the other alternatives on the list, if you use a jutsu that's strong enough to seal, that is, but still, other methods would be futile against the Edo Tensei body. So much so that people were kind of glad when Madara revived himself with Rinnegan Tensei in the Warg, saying, "Oh, it was foolish of you to leave your Edo Tensei state. Now we can actually kill you." Little did they know that Madara got way more powerful when he was alive, but still, it's arguably the easiest and most effective way to be immortal in the Naruto series. Like the video and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so already. This really helps with the YouTube algorithm. Ring those notifications, don't miss out on any videos, and watch this other cool Naruto video right here for more content. Thank you so much for watching, guys.